Today, we're going to be talking about what Coach Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels had to say in their presser today. We're also going to be talking about the latest injury updates around the Washington Commanders, along with their latest roster moves. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the pressers here for Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels. And so, look, I think that the two major points that came out of their pressers today was mindset and execution. I think that with Dan Quinn, he really talked about just the mindset and the focus with the team. And then with Jayden Daniels, execution and detail. And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in detail here in a moment. And so just paraphrasing what they had to say. If you guys want to see this and their entire presser, you can head over to the Commanders YouTube page and you can see it there. And so let's start with what Dan Quinn talked about. And so besides just really talking about the mindset and focus of the team, I think that one of the biggest things that Dan Quinn talked about with the team, or talked about with the press around the team, is the injuries. And so starting with the first injury update that we got from Dan Quinn, he talks about Noah Brown. And so with Noah Brown, he says that he is officially on the IR. And he said that the team just really, tried to get him going, but just the groin did not respond. And when he was asked about if it was a setback, he said that it was not a setback. It just didn't respond in the way that they hoped. I talked about really, in 2020 hindsight, maybe they would have went ahead and went with the IR. But, he's a big competitor. Obviously the Commanders thought that this was something that maybe he could, fight through and get back out there to the field, but it just didn't progress in the way that they wanted it to. And he just said that, look, more time to recover, and they just really want to get Noah Brown back 100%. So, again, just paraphrasing the things that Dan Quinn said in his presser. And so that was the first, injury update that we had here around the team. Next, he talks about Terry McLaurin, because he's asked about Terry McLaurin. And it sounds like that he's definitely trending in the right direction. And so he said that he is set to practice this week. He did talk about the fact that today's practice is just really at a jog through pace. He did say that really, the key for Terry McLaurin is going to be the full speed routes and the movements. And then he's asked later on, like, what that really looks like for him as far as his return back to play. And he talks about like game simulation and just running different routes, different movements. And he said that, he's definitely taking a good step moving forward here. And so I definitely think that it sounds like that he's trending in the right direction. So again, we still don't have an official word on Terry McLaurin, but it sounds like that he's definitely headed in the right direction. And so next, speaking of players that are heading in the right direction, and so Dan Quinn talks about Sam Cosmi. And so he says that Sam Cosmi last week, he got the padded work. He did a lot of work and reps and stuff like that. And he said that they're looking for the same process this week. And so he was very impressed with the progress that Sam Cosmi has made. So it sounds like that he's headed in the right direction. And then speaking about some more positive here for the Washington Commanders as far as the injuries are concerned, it looks like that Jonathan Jones, his 21-day window has opened up. And so remember the last time we talked about Jonathan Jones, he was dealing with that hamstring. And so he's been out for a month here. And so it looks like that his practice or his return to play window is opened up with the 21 days. And so this is good to see. Jonathan Jones would certainly help this team in that secondary, hopefully get some takeaways and take away some of those big plays. And so that was a positive update there. And then, just lastly, just kind of looking at some more injuries here. And so this is not something that I've seen officially on the injury report just yet. I haven't looked at it, but one of the things that's talked about in the presser, and actually Dan Quinn's asked about him, was Dorrance Armstrong and talking about his hamstring. And so it looks like that he is dealing with a little bit of a hamstring. Dan Quinn said that, it is a little concerning, But, they'll find out a little bit more tomorrow once they start to ramp up the speed. Again, kind of going back to what Dan Quinn was talking about with the practice today, just really at the jog through pace. And so, they'll find out obviously once he starts to try to, ramp up with the speed and everything else. And so, this is huge for the Washington Commanders because I believe he's had at least a half a sack here in 5 of the 6 games that the Commanders have played. And so Dorrance Armstrong having a really good season. Hopefully, this hamstring is not anything serious. And so that's really the update there. And then lastly, this ties into just really some of the roster moves for the Washington Commanders. And so Dan Quinn did mention Drake Jackson, which we talked about him yesterday. And remember, we talked about the fact that he's coming back from the knee. And so Dan Quinn does say that and says that he is coming back from the knee, and did say that, they're happy to have Drake Jackson. And then, this is something that wasn't mentioned, but this was something that was tweeted out here by the team. As you see, they signed guard Julian Good-Jones to the practice squad here. And so it looks like that from what I'm seeing, he was actually with the team the last couple seasons. And he also, too, was with the team here over the off season as well. And so it looks like that they went ahead and cut him loose. And so that was the most recent roster move. And so because of that, guard Tyler Good was released, and then they picked up guard Julian Good-Jones. And so he's going to be with the practice squad. And so again, I believe that he was with the team this offseason, and then obviously they released him and then brought him back. And so that's the most recent update around the roster, and then also to the injuries as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of touch bases here with Dan Quinn and this mindset. And so the first thing that he talked about, as far as just the team and its approach, is just really getting all 3 phases rocking together. He said that that's really the goal, and just to get the complementary football like they want to do it. So get back to just really those standards that way. And then, he talks about just really, what happens after a tough loss like the Commanders just had here with the Bears. And so he said that, it's a hard one. He said that it's tough because they look at this and they say that they beat themselves. But, these are games that definitely hurt the most. But it's like you learn the lesson and then you get it corrected. So he said that that's really what the Commanders are looking to do here, is get some things corrected. Then next, he's asked about like the issue of the starts here. And so I believe that's just talking about just the slow starts that we've talked about here. And he said that, like, look, you look at the leaders and everything else, he feels like that he likes the intent and getting ready, because he's asked about like just, how the team comes in, just getting ready, with their approach pregame and everything else. And so he really likes that. He's talking about more collaboration here, and just going to continue to look to get that right. And so talking about just the issues of the slow starts here with the Commanders. And so again, just talking about that mindset and the focus for the team. The next, speaking of mindset directly, he's asked about the defense and the mindset just really after Monday. And he said that, look, the sky is not falling, with this defense. He said that there are some things that they're doing well. He talked about the third downs and everything else, how they're playing that well. And he said that they're just not getting the ball enough and not hitting the tackling to the standards that have been set. And so he talked about that the meetings, tense and tight in the meetings. He said, look, we have a big challenge here with the Dallas Cowboys, but they're looking forward to the challenge. And so just really talking about the mindset here for the team and the defense and everything else moving forward. And so next, I wanted to talk a little bit here about Jayden Daniels and his presser. And so he talked after practice, and Jayden Daniels, man, he's usually pretty short and quick when it comes down to what he had to say. But the biggest thing that he talks about really is execution. And so he's asked about the turnovers there, and he was like, the way to fix that is just to not turn the ball over. And, I think if you've been paying attention here over the last couple of days, Dan Quinn mentioned this yesterday about the fact that him and Jayden Daniels, had a text message or whatever the case may be, and neither one of them shared what they talked about. But I'm guessing it had something to do with just the game and accountability and everything else. And so Jayden Daniels didn't talk anymore about that. But he does mention it. And he also talks about really execution. And so he talked about, like, when the team is doing well in these early downs, he's asked about like the third downs and stuff like that. And he said, like, the bottom line is, they need to stay out of those third downs. And if they do get to those situations, then they need to execute. And then he also talks about really just looking to bounce back, talking about just execute, focus on the details and things like that. And so once again, him mentioning execution, he does talk about Terry McLaurin and just how he will help once he gets back. And then he talked about Luke McCaffrey. He talks about how he's making plays in special teams and just really how he's stepping up as a receiver as well, and talked about how he had the wide open touchdowns with his touchdowns here, jokingly here about that. But he's talking about Luke McCaffrey stepping up. And so, it sounds like that, he's a player that certainly he's looking to maybe get the football to some more here. And then next, he talks about the fact that the team, they still have a ways to go here. And it's about just really kind of stacking days and things like that. And you just want to get hot at the right time. And so again, just focusing on those little details and just executing on a day-to-day basis here. And so that was Jayden Daniels, talking about just really, again, just executing here in his presser. And so, lastly, before we jump out of here, just wanted to kind of mention that, when they're talking about these main themes with mindset and execution, like, I think that is going to be the bottom line here for the Commanders. And I think that if they can tighten these things up, really that is going to be the difference for them to just really start to put together some consistent football. I think that that's really what it's all about here. And we knew that it was going to be tough for this team because, look, everybody knows that the Commanders are coming. The schedule obviously was given to them because of that, because of the season that they had a season ago. And so I just think that, yes, if they can put these two things together, we're going to start to see this team really start to play some good football. And I love what Jayden Daniels says there, towards the end, that it's just all about just getting hot at the right time. And so it is going to be a huge challenge for this team on defense, like Dan Quinn talks about in the presser there with the mindset and everything else, because, you are getting a Cowboys offense that is coming in third with the points per game at 29.7 points per game. They put up 27 plus in 4 of their last 5 games here. I think it's been 0-1 sacks in 3 straight games, and they've had 5 touchdown passes. And so, yes, this team defensively is going to have a challenge, but again, it's going to come down to playing some complementary football here. And so, you guys, let me know in the comments here what your key takeaways are, from the injury updates that we heard here from Dan Quinn, and also to the roster moves as well. And so, let me know what your key takeaways are there. And then also too, just let me know what you guys are thinking as far as what Jayden Daniels had to say as far as execution here moving forward for this team. And so, look, as we always say, go Commanders, and we will see you on the next one. All right, peace.